Okay, so I want you to picture something. Picture the Strait of Hormuz. It's February 2026.
Right.
And usually, when we talk about that stretch of water, we're thinking about oil tankers.
These massive floating leviathans.
Exactly, just moving energy from point A to point B.
Yeah.
But right now, if you were, say, standing on the deck of one of those tankers, the view would be very different.
Oh, yeah. The horizon is crowded.
And not with commerce. It's crowded with kinetic potential.
It's less of a shipping lane right now and more of a parking lot for some very heavy naval artillery.
That's a perfect way to put it. We're looking at a convergence of gray hulls, radar arrays, and missile tubes from some of the biggest players on the geopolitical board.
Mm-hmm.
So today, we are diving into Maritime Security Belt 2026. Now, on paper, this is just a joint naval exercise,
Right.
Russia, China, and Iran. But if you look at the source material we've pulled, the intelligence reports, the energy data, and especially the rhetoric coming out of Moscow, this does not feel like standard practice.
It really isn't. It's a signal, a very loud signal.
So that's our mission today. We need to decode that signal. We're going to unpack why these three specific nations are teaming up in this specific choke point right now.
And the most confusing part of the whole puzzle.
Yeah.
Why is this happening at the exact same moment that diplomats are sitting down in Geneva talking about peace?
It is the ultimate split-screen reality. War games on one channel, peace talks on the other.
Yep.
Okay, so let's start with the war games side of the screen. Maritime Security Belt 2026. Give us the rundown. Who's there and what are they actually doing?
Okay, so this is definitely not just ships waving flags at each other.
Right.
The exercise was officially announced by Nikolai Patrushev. He's the Russian presidential advisor. It was in an interview with Argumenti I Facti.
Okay.
And the core participants are exactly who you'd expect. The Russian Federation, the People's Republic of China, and the Islamic Republic of Iran.
A familiar trio.
A very familiar trio. This is actually the 8th time they've done this specific drill. They started back in 2019. But the tone, the language this year, it feels different.
How so?
Well, Patrushev isn't just talking about readiness. He's using this very specific, very loaded language. He explicitly said that this exercise is part of Moscow's effort to build a multipolar world order on the oceans.
Multipolar world order on the oceans. Wow. That is a heavy phrase. It sounds grand, but let's be cynical for a second. Is that a real strategy or is it just a scary-sounding slogan for the West?
Oh, it's a strategy. I mean, think about what order on the oceans has meant for the last 80 years or so.
It's World War II, basically.
Exactly, since 1945.
Right.
The United States Navy has effectively been the guarantor of maritime security. They patrol the lanes, they suppress piracy, and critically, they enforce sanctions. That is a unipolar order.
Right. The global COP. If you want to move your goods, you have to play by the COP's rules.
You got it.
Well-
So what Patrushev is describing with multipolarity is a direct challenge to that monopoly. He's talking about creating a parallel security structure.
So if Russia, China, and Iran want to trade, especially in sanctioned goods, they don't want to rely on the U.S. Navy.
They can't. In fact, they view the U.S. Navy as the primary threat to their trade. Patrushev actually mentioned protecting trade routes that Russia sees as increasingly vulnerable.
And vulnerable here is code for vulnerable to Western interdiction.
Precisely. This isn't just about parades. It's about proving they can provide escort duty for what we often call the shadow fleet.
But practically speaking, how effective is that? You've got 3 different navies, 3 different languages, totally different command and control systems.
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
Interoperability.
Yeah.
It's incredibly difficult. I mean, NATO has spent decades perfecting it. These 3, they are still figuring it out. But the fact that this is the 8th time they've done this suggests they're moving past the getting to know you phase.
They're building a common language of force.
I think so. They're likely practicing things like data sharing, joint targeting, formation maneuvers.
And they picked quite a stage to practice on, the Strait of Hormuz.
The geography here is the message.
Okay, so for anyone listening who maybe hasn't looked at a map of the Middle East recently, paint the picture for us. Why does this little strip of water matter so much?
Imagine a door, a very, very narrow door. It separates the Persian Gulf from the Gulf of Oman.
Okay.
And through that door passes approximately 13 million barrels of crude oil every single day.
13 million barrels.
According to Kepler's 2025 analysis, that's about 31% of the entire world's seaborne oil.
A third. Almost a third of the global supply squeezes through a channel that's only, 21 miles wide at its narrowest?
Exactly. But the shipping lanes themselves, The safe water, that's only 2 miles wide in each direction.
2 miles? That's nothing. You could practically swim that.
It is an incredible choke point.
Yeah.
And if you can control that 2-mile strip, you basically have your hand on the windpipe of the global economy.
Which brings us to the pregame show. Because before the Russians and Chinese even arrived, Iran was already making some pretty aggressive moves.
You're talking about the IRGC exercise on February 16th?
Right. Intelligent control of the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, the name itself. And they reported a partial closure of the waterway.
Partial closure is a very diplomatic way of saying enter at your own risk.
But how do you partially close an international strait? I mean, legally, under the law of the sea, you can't just do that, can you?
Legally, no. The Strait of Hormuz is an international transit passage. But physically? Oh, absolutely. The IRGC, Iran's Revolutionary Guard, they don't just use big ships.
They use those swarm tactics.
Exactly. Hundreds of fast attack craft, these little Ashura-class speedboats armed with rockets. Plus, they have shore-based anti-ship missiles. They have naval mines.
So when they say partial closure, they don't mean they put up a little traffic cone. They mean they saturated the area with threat vectors.
Correct. And to prove the point, they fired live missiles at targets inside the strait.
Wow.
And when you start shooting live ordnances, commercial insurers pull coverage, captains drop anchor, and the flow just stops. You don't need a legal decree to close the strait. You just need enough fear.
That is a massive flex. It's them saying, we can turn off the lights anytime we want to.
And that sets the perfect stage for the arrival of their partners. The Russians and Chinese aren't sailing into a neutral zone. They're sailing into a zone where Iran has just demonstrated dominance.
Okay, I want to zoom out for a second, because this isn't just about these three. The sources connect this to BRICS, and this is where the plot really thickens for me. Usually when we say BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, we're talking about, I don't know, currency swaps, development banks.
Economics, yeah.
We are not talking about battleships.
That is shifting, and it's shifting fast. Patrushev explicitly linked these Hormuz drills to a broader pattern.
Yeah.
He pointed to the Will to Peace 2026 exercise.
That was the one last month, right? Off the coast of South Africa.
Yep, January. And guess who was there? Russia, China, and Iran again. But here's the kicker.
Go on.
The United Arab Emirates and South Africa also participated.
The UAE, wait, pause there. The UAE hosts American air bases. They fly F-16s. They're a core part of the U.S. security setup in the Gulf. What are they doing in naval drills with Russia and China?
That is the detail that probably keeps Pentagon planners up at night. It signals a hedging strategy.
Hedging?
The UAE looks at the region and they realize they can't rely solely on Washington anymore. They live right next door to Iran. They trade heavily with China. They have to keep lines open with everyone.
So for the UAE, it's not about switching sides. It's about having insurance policies on both sides of the street.
I think that's a great way to put it. But for Russia and China, bringing a country like the UAE into the fold validates this new multipolar security idea. Patrushev used a very specific phrase. He said, BRICS must now be given a fully fledged strategic maritime dimension.
Strategic maritime dimension. Okay, so translated from bureaucrat speak, that basically means a BRICS Navy.
Or at least a BRICS maritime coalition. Think about it. If the whole goal of BRICS is to create an economic alternative to the G7 one that doesn't rely on the dollar,
then you need a security alternative to NATO to protect those shipments.
You have to. You can't build a post-dollar world if all your goods are still being inspected by the U.S. Navy.
That makes perfect sense. It's like building a private road because you don't want to pay the tolls on the main highway. But you also need your own security guards for that road.
A perfect analogy. And they are testing out those security guards right now in the busiest intersection in the world.
Okay, so we have the muscle flexing, we have the multipolar ambition, but here's the part that just makes my head spin. While all this is happening, the IRGC is firing missiles, the Russians are sailing in. There are actual U.S. and Iranian diplomats sitting in a room in Geneva.
The paradox of 2026.
This was the second round of nuclear talks, February 17th,
Yeah.
literally the day after Iran fired those missiles.
Mediated by Oman, yes.
It just feels so counterintuitive. You'd think if you want something from the Americans, like sanctions relief, you don't start the week by shooting missiles across their favorite shipping lane. Is this just a coordination failure between their diplomats and their military, or is this on purpose?
Oh, it's absolutely on purpose. In the West, we often see diplomacy and military force as two separate things. You stop fighting to start talking.
Right.
But for Iran, and for Russia too, they're concurrent. It's a strategy called escalation dominance.
Explain that.
By firing those missiles just hours before the talks, Iran is walking into that Geneva conference room and, metaphorically, putting a gun on the table.
Ah.
They're saying, we are here to negotiate, but do not mistake our willingness to talk for weakness. If these talks fail, the chaos in the Strait is the alternative.
So they're raising the stakes. It's sign the deal or the oil stops flowing.
Exactly. It forces the U.S. negotiators to realize they aren't just arguing about centrifuges anymore. They're arguing about the stability of the entire global energy market. It leverages the West's fear of inflation, of economic instability.
And did it work? Did the gun on the table strategy get them anywhere?
Well, the talks didn't collapse, which is something.
Yeah.
The Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araki, he came out and said that guiding principles have been agreed upon.
Guiding principles. That is classic, diplomatic, vague booking.
It is. It means we agreed to keep talking and didn't throw chairs at each other. But given the context, given the missiles, the fact they're still at the table is significant. It shows the U.S. is desperate to de-escalate, and Iran knows it.
But the U.S. isn't just sitting there taking it, are they? We talked about the Russian and Chinese ships. What's the American response look like?
Oh, far from it. The U.S. has responded with a massive surge of hardware. We're now seeing what they call a dual carrier presence in the region for the first time in nearly a year.
Meaning 2 full aircraft carrier strike groups.
Yes. You have the USS Abraham Lincoln operating in the Arabian Sea, and crucially, the USS Gerald R. Ford has been ordered to the region.
And I want to pause on the Ford. Because for people who don't follow naval tech, saying another carrier doesn't really capture it, the Ford class is a different beast entirely.
It absolutely is. It's the newest, most advanced supercarrier in the world. It uses these electromagnetic launch systems, EMOMALs, which means it can launch more planes faster with heavier payloads than any other carrier.
So sending the Ford isn't just about adding more numbers, it's adding a capability that no other nation on Earth can even come close to matching.
It is a technological mic drop. It's the U.S. saying, you can have your multipolar coalition and your little swarm boats, but we can park a floating airfield off your coast that generates more air power than most nations' entire air forces.
And that's not even counting the 30,000 troops across 18 bases in the region.
Correct. It's a very clear reminder that while the unipolar moment might be fading, the U.S. military is still, by far, the lethality king on the block.
Okay, let's recap the board here because it is getting very crowded.
It is.
In the Strait of Hormuz, you have Iran, Russia, and China doing live fire drills, basically practicing how to secure a post-American trade network.
And effectively daring the West to try and stop them.
Then just outside the Strait, you have 2 massive U.S. carrier strike groups, loaded for bear, watching every single move.
And in a quiet room in Geneva, you have diplomats trying to find a piece of paper that keeps these 2 massive armadas from actually shooting at each other.
It feels like a traffic jam where every driver has a machine gun.
It's a very apt description, and it really highlights how fragile this moment is. What we're witnessing is a contest for the rules of the road.
That's the key takeaway for me. I mean, we grew up assuming the ocean was this neutral global commons, mare liberum, the free sea.
Right, the idea that the oceans belong to everyone and no one can just close them off.
But if BRICS is really building a strategic maritime dimension and Iran is asserting intelligent control over choke points, are we moving away from that free sea concept?
We might be moving toward a mare clausum, a closed sea, or at least a sea that's divided into spheres of influence. A world where the Western Ocean is patrolled by NATO and maybe the Eastern Ocean is patrolled by a BRICS coalition.
That would effectively end globalization as we know it. You can't have a single global market if you have 2 separate hostile shipping networks.
It would certainly complicate things. I mean, your Amazon package, your tank of gas, your phone, they all rely on the seamless flow of goods. If that flow gets balkanized, everything gets slower, more expensive, and a lot more dangerous.
Which is why you, the listener, should care about a few destroyers doing donuts in the Persian Gulf. It's not just boat stuff, it's the plumbing of the world economy being rerouted in real time.
And all the plumbers are very heavily armed.
On that cheerful note, we are going to leave you to mull over the end of the unipolar ocean.
Keep your eyes on the horizon.
We will be back with another deep dive soon. Thanks for listening.